So as you was just saying, you know, you have a preconceived idea. So as the information comes in, it goes through your preconceived idea and it comes out in what you believe they said, not the reality of what has been said. Okay. And then cognitive biases can also be so influential that it colors almost every aspect of our daily lives. Okay. So some people can be so caught up in cognitive bias that it's actually controlling every part of their life, how they hear things, how they see things, how they perceive things, and how they experience things. So I'm going to go through them. I'm going to go through the six, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to reflect and tell me if any of those have been something that you've experienced in the past, or maybe even currently experiencing. So, first one, information bias. So, the tendency to easily accept information that confirms your point of view and reject information that does not support it. And this happens all the time, where people will only focus on information that helps to view their point. And anything else, even if it's sound, even if it's proven and it's evidence, that people will still choose to reject it. And that's often known as cognitive dissonance, mental conflict. The second one is the status quo bias. So the tendency to want things to stay relatively the same as they have always been. Okay. So you hear these common phrases like, it's always been this way. I've always done this. And that is like the status quo bias, where it's rather than anything changing and rocking the boat and pushing me in my comfort zone, out of my comfort zone, sorry, I would rather it stays the same, even though this isn't effective, even though this isn't working, even though this process is outdated. Then we have the mere exposure effect. So the tendency to like something just because you are familiar with it. Okay. So sometimes people, just because they're used to that, they will stick to that. And even though there may be something more effective, but it may mean learning a new skill, they will reject it and ignore it. It may be information that will be quite useful to help someone to grow and develop, but because a certain person has said it, they don't take it on board. Then we got the reactance. So the urge to do the opposite of what you are asked to do in order to preserve your freedom of choice. And I'm sure all of us have had experience at some point in our career where we have just done that, where we've just because, well, you're telling me to do that and I don't want to do that kind of attitude, and where we are actually operating out of a bias where actually that thing may be beneficial. And we didn't even give it a chance to see if it would be beneficial because of where we were at in our mind and our emotions at that time. Then we have the anchoring bias. So the tendency to place excessive weight or importance on one piece of information is often the first piece of information you learned about a topic. So because this is something that someone first learned, they take that for gospel. And when something comes that actually is more updated, that actually trumps that information, because we heard that first piece of information first, that's what we hold on to. That's why when we talk about when they say always wait until you hear the second side of the story. Sometimes we can hear one person's side and we could immediately just believe what that person's saying until we hear what the second person has to say. And so it's really important. Anchoring bias can be very detrimental. And the last one is the curse of knowledge bias. So when well-informed people are unable to look at an issue from the perspective of a less informed person. That could be a parent not listening to the child. That could be a manager not listening to staff. That could be a partner not listening to the other partner. So or that could be an expert in the field who's not listening to someone who is a student and just learning, but has come to find out some information that's very valid. And so it's really important that when we are operating in our day-to-day lives, work, family, at home, friends, etc., to be mindful of the biases that can creep in very subtly and actually control the way we think, feel, react, and behave.